It's the Website 101 podcast. We are back. This is the podcast for anyone who builds websites or manages them on a regular basis. If that's you, this is the show for you. I am one of your hosts, Mike Mella. With me is Sean Smith, and with us is not Amanda Lutz. Amanda's not with us today. She's on vacation. Right, Sean?
Yes, she's on vacation. We're disappointed she's not here, but we're recording a special episode because myself and Mike were able to attend a conference this past weekend called PodCamp Toronto. It's for podcasters. Mm-hmm. It was interesting, fun, good people, and we wanted to report back with what we learned at this conference and how it could apply to you as web developers or small business owners, because there's some things are universally applicable. It's not just for podcasters.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, so it's a bit of a departure from our normal format. It's about podcasting, but hopefully you can get something out of it anyway, whatever you do.
It's kind of meta, but we're going to keep it short.
That's right.
So Saturday morning, the first session that we went to was called the care and feeding of an audience. And yes, what this session is how podcasters can grow their audience. And the key takeaway that we took, and we think that you as business owners or self-employed developers can do, is to ask your target audience specific questions and get answers from them. Now, the presenter went through and we took notes on about 9 or 10 questions.
Yeah, Tom Webster is the name of the speaker.
Yes, Tom, and he was really good.
Great.
Now, we could put together a survey with 9 or 10 questions, but that's a lot to ask anybody to go through and provide answers. So what we did is we put our own little twist on it. Is we're going to have a new page on our website. You go to /feedback or click the link, which will be in the show notes. Mm-hmm. You go to /feedback and the question is going to appear and there's going to be a text area. You type your answer, you submit, it's done.
Couldn't be easier.
Anonymous. You don't need your name. You don't need your email.
Yep.
If you want to answer all of our questions, submit again, because every page load is a random question. So it's only one question. It's not difficult.
Yeah. If you listen to this show ever and get something out of it, or you don't, or if anything at all you want to say to us, go to that link, website101podcast.com/feedback, and just answer that one question. We'd really appreciate it because we're trying to collect some information from our audience.
Yeah, and you can do the same thing with your website. Either, I'm sure if you got a WordPress theme, you can find a way to do that, or you can get a developer to help you out. Mm-hmm. Create some open-ended questions that will help you grow your audience or grow your business.
Yeah, this was a great talk. We really learned a lot from Tom.
Yeah. So Mike, what did we see on the second episode or second session?
Second session. So the second one was the one we went to was called Podcast Networks and How to Pitch Your Show to Them, and this was presented by Michael Mongiardi. It was pretty good. He worked for a podcast network. I think it was called Sonar.
Yes, Sonar.
And they have a bunch of different podcasts in their umbrella. And he was talking about if you're running a podcast, how would you, pitch a show to a network so you can get more reach and that kind of thing. It was very interesting. He's not his company's not Gimlet or iHeartRadio or something huge, which he admitted. So it's a little more of a niche network. But it was really interesting. Learn what he has to say. I like that talk.
Yeah, I thought it was good as well.
Mm-hmm. And then what did we go to around noon?
We split up instead of sticking together. So
yes,
I went to the one about analytics. What numbers do you need to look at? And this was interesting, but the speaker spent most of his time talking about Spotify and Apple Podcasts. And yes, I do have an account for both of those, but I've never looked at their stats. So I've kind of decided that maybe I'm going to take a look at it and think about what he said. The key takeaway for listeners, look at your analytics. Find out what's important for you and your industry.
Yeah. I mean, it makes plenty of sense, of course. It's a little bit of a black box figuring out how some of these analytics work and that, but yeah, definitely worth looking into.
And I believe, Mike, you went to see the one behind the scenes with CBC Podcasts.
Yeah, that's right. The team, there were 3 folks who handle a lot of the production for CBC's podcasts, which apparently I learned that I listened to a lot of CBC podcasts because they had them all up on the screen there. And I said, and I know all those. Anyway, that was very interesting. CBC is just a different beast, as far as podcasting goes. They have a budget and producers and executive producers and all that. So it's interesting to learn how they go about it. I don't know how much it applied to our specific podcast, but it was cool to see for sure.
Yeah. I'm looking at the 2:00 listing, and I don't remember which one we went to after lunch.
Let's see. We went to but how do you manage a podcast 2023 edition?
Oh, right. That was the one that he spent the time talking about various project management tools like Trello and Basecamp and things like that.
Yeah, Jacob McCourt was the name of the presenter. He did a good job. He talked about the actual management side of setting up spreadsheets to manage your episodes, all that kind of thing.
Yeah, so for us, it wasn't that helpful because we're very familiar with this, and we actually have 1 or 2 episodes that I'll link to in the show notes about project management.
Yeah.
And if you would like a newer, fresher episode on that topic, again, hit us up on the contact form. Mm-hmm. Website 101podcast.com/contact.
That's right. 3 p.m. Did we split up again for this one? Oh no. Okay. So we went to an initial talk, called Interviewing Without All the Prep, but we decided pretty close in that it just was not for us. So there's a rule at this conference, by the way, called the rule of 2 feet, meaning you have 2 feet. If you don't like what you're hearing, get up and leave, politely and go to a different talk. So they encourage that if you're not getting anything out of it. So in this one, we left that one and instead went to Don't Fear the Mic, How to Host a Successful Podcast, which is a panel, right? Remember that one?
I thought we did the 5 podcast hacks.
I don't think so. I think we went to that because I remember the host.
No, you're right. You're right. We went to the host one.
Yeah. And it was a panel hosted by kind of comedians who run podcasts and stuff. I don't know. Yes. That one actually wasn't that great either, to be honest, as far as I'm concerned. That hour block was a little bit.
Yeah, I think that hour was a throwaway. And that's nothing against the hosts of these particular sessions. It just didn't work for us. We were not their target audience. That's
right. But the 4 p.m. one was pretty good. That was called Stories from the Podcast Trenches.
Which was also a panel, and they talked about good and bad things, experiences, and I really enjoyed this one.
Yeah, and there was a lot of really great, we learned about that, what's that nursing podcast? Maybe we'll link to it if we can dig it up. These 2 nurses who have a podcast, and they've grown it into something really successful. Yeah,
it was Sarah Fung and Amy Archibald Varley.
Right.
They were really, really interesting, and I was hoping to hit them up at the after party, but I didn't see them there, and I didn't see them today. I had a specific question I wanted to talk to them about. I really liked what they had to say.
Yeah, it was interesting finding out how they run their business. It was really cool. So then we had an after party, which was kind of cool. We schmoozed a little bit with some of the people that evening and met some folks there. That was cool.
Yeah. We met a student who is visiting or living in Mississauga, but he's originally from India. And then there was another 2 guys that we sat at our table, and we spent some time talking to them. Lots of fun.
Yeah, I learned a lot from them too. And then the next day we had the remaining presentations of the conference. The first one we went to was a good one. It was called How to Make a Huge Impression with a Niche Podcast. We consider ourselves somewhat niche, I guess.
I would say that we are indie, niche, and small.
Yeah.
But we would like to be indie, niche, and large.
That's right. This guy is what's his name again? He's a lawyer who his name is Hussein Panju, and he has a podcast called Lawyered, I believe, and it's about Canadian law and, the cases that they deal with, that kind of thing.
Yeah, and he was an excellent speaker. He was engaging, he was funny, and if you get a chance to see him, I would recommend it. He was really, really good.
Yeah, good information there.
And then At 11 o'clock, what did we do here? 10 things I wish I knew before I started my podcast. Now, ironically, myself and Mike were planning on doing a 5 things I knew before I started my podcast. And right when we were ready to submit our abstract, this one went up. So they stole our idea.
However, the guy the presenter, his name is Marco Timpano, literally wrote the book because he has a book called 25 Things I Wish I Knew Before I Started My Podcast. So we thought, well, maybe we'll let him handle this topic. So we backed up.
It was his presentation was really interesting. He was an engaging speaker. It was lots of fun. And we could have still done ours because our things were different than his things.
Yeah, there was really a bit of a different angle that he took rather than what we were going to do. So, yeah, it's too bad. But maybe next year we'll be in there when Amanda's back. Yeah,
so today there was no lunch. And we went right into the next one, which was the AI caster, using AI to start or enhance and boost your podcast. Now, both myself and Mike have played around with AI, so we didn't really learn a lot from it. But what we'd like to say is that you can use AI to help you with your business or your web development or whatever it is. The key takeaway, if you're going to be using AI, is to not just copy and paste. Use it to generate ideas and then write them yourselves, because the presenter, and I forget his name, informed us that there is some SEO penalty when Google or whoever determines that your content was written by AI. So you'll want to take that content that was provided to you and change it up with your own words and voice.
Yeah, absolutely. It's
basically don't plagiarize. Remember what you learned in high school.
Don't plagiarize even from an AI generator.
Yeah,
it was cool. It's good advice. And then finally, the last presentation we went to was really great, I think. How to pitch yourself to sponsors, because we are considering, we don't have any sponsors on the show, as we kind of joke about once in a while, but we're considering exploring that option. And we listened to a presenter who has a very niche podcast about traveling, like tourism, but what would you call it? Like environmentally friendly tourist options, things like that.
She billed herself as an influencer on Instagram and TikTok, and then she has her podcast. She presented a lot of excellent information. And what I would encourage listeners to do is, you may not be looking for a sponsor on your podcast, because maybe you have one or you don't, but you may want advertising on your website, or you may want to look at becoming a sponsor for somebody who is doing a podcast or a YouTube channel in your business's niche or market.
Yeah. Her name is Erin Elizabeth Hines, and she does have relationships with promoters and that kind of thing who have sponsored episodes and that, and she gave a lot of advice if you wanted to go that route. It was interesting.
Yeah. So I want to give I have some thoughts about the presentations in general, and I'm not going to name names because I want to draw on some things that we've talked on the podcast in the past. One of the things that we often talk about is accessibility. And I had an issue with at least 2 of the presenters that their slides were not easily read because they didn't have good contrast. Like the one that I'm thinking of, the background was a light medium green with white text or a yellow headline, and I couldn't read it at all. It was really hard to focus on them.
Yeah. I had one talk where I mentioned this to you, Sean. They did that thing where they would have some funny animated GIF on a slide to represent the thought that they're trying to convey at that moment, which is funny for the first 5 seconds when you see it loop. And then as they're talking over that slide for the next 5 minutes, it's just loop after loop of that same animated GIF. And it's very distracting when you're supposed to be focusing on what they're saying. So
the other thing that I would say to speakers at conferences, and please remember, I used to teach public speaking, so I'm speaking from experience as a teacher and somebody who attends a lot of conferences. Don't whisper. When you talk really quietly, nobody can hear you.
Yeah.
You need to project. If you don't have a microphone because the venue doesn't have one, you need to speak loudly. That's not yelling. It's projecting deep breaths. Speak from your diaphragm.
Yeah.
There's 3 or 4 presenters that I struggled listening to them, and I was not necessarily sitting in the back of the room. I was in the middle of the room most of the time. Please speak loudly.
Yeah, this conference is, I mean, it's not the most, high budget conference. It's a free conference. You pay what you want. And, there were very few microphones. Like the panels sometimes had mics if they're seated at a table there, but most speakers did not have a microphone. So they had to just speak to the room.
Yeah. Overall, this was a great conference. I am planning to attend next year. PodCamp Toronto has been around for 15 years or so. This is my first time going. Really liked it. If you're in the area or a close drive away or you want to fly in, check it out. It is worth going to. PodCamp Toronto.
Yeah, hopefully next year we will have a session at the get it in time and not have a duplicate that's already in there or whatever.
You can meet us.
That's right. Come out
and Amanda will hopefully be with us that time. She couldn't make it this time because she had a previously planned vacation. Yeah. She flew out on Saturday morning. Conference started Saturday morning.
Right.
Anyways, thank you for listening to this episode of the Website 101 podcast. We'll see you on the next one.
Bye.